The United Nations Population Fund is calling for safer conditions for women and girls in Cabo Delgado province in northern Mozambique. It says they are living in fear of being kidnapped, raped or forced into marriage or prostitution. The fund is now calling on government to take action. To discuss these concerns further, we're joined by Dr. Julita Onabanjo from the United Nations Population Fund, the UNFPA. Dr. Onabanjo, good morning and thank you very much for your time. I mean, the situation in northern Cabo Delgado has been getting worse and worse since 2017 when the conflict first broke out there. And as you say in your opinion or your reflections, which I've read, you've got a perfect storm of instability in that province, and women and girls are bearing the brunt of the violence that's taking place there. It's a huge problem to resolve. Do you think there's a political will to support your type of organizations locally to help those women and children, thousands of whom have now been displaced?
Good morning, Dan, and really good morning to all the ENCA viewers. And we really do appreciate the opportunity to speak to you about the Cabo Delgado situation, which indeed for women and girls is a huge emergency. Political will, I think there is a will to really see how we can almost address what I see as the symptoms. And indeed, we need to do much more also around the root causes of what we find now in this really humanitarian, human rights development crisis. I think indeed the northern part of Mozambique and in Cabo Delgado has had compounding and multiple interconnected crises, and one that has really escalated over the last few months. And so really, it is a call to act now.
Yeah, in your reflections, Dr. Onabanjo, you talk about there's initiatives on the ground, for example, to create safe spaces for women and girls in some of those resettlement areas and some of the hard-to-reach areas. I mean, some of those remote areas in Cabo Delgado, but also in neighboring inland provinces of Nyasa and Nampula. There's mobile services, but that doesn't seem to be broad enough. What more help are you looking for to provide safety and security to the women and access to things like reproductive health services?
Indeed, UNFPA and the UN system as a collective has really tried to see how we can support the urgent and life-saving needs of women, and particularly pregnant women. A group of regional directors for the UN system had gone down in December to really get a good hands-on feel for the needs. And it was clear that a lot of young women were pregnant. A lot of women had moved with literally nothing on their backs. And therefore, some of the basic and simple needs, whether it's clothing, food, water, shelter, were urgent. The scope of the problem is huge. And I think even though as the UN system works with government and partners to ensure, particularly we had seen disruption in health systems, really lack of ability to actually get women into antenatal care, postnatal care, safe delivery. And so that's why UNFPA had established other ways of bringing the services closer to people. We had health clinics established in these resettlement camps. In addition to that, what you referred to as women and girls safe spaces, because we do know that in these crises, what tends to escalate is violence, whether it's intimate violence, whether it's domestic violence, whether it's rape, and definitely a lot of these women had been traumatized from the violence in which they were running away from and now being resettled. And so working on their psychosocial support, looking at ways in which we can establish mechanisms to ensure that their protection and their safety is secured. The needs are huge. The needs are huge. And I think this is what's the worrying about the Cabo Delgado situation. Yeah. In as much as it has been protected, it is getting worse. And that's why we need more assistance and focus on this.
Yeah, that's what, I mean, the reports are showing that it's just getting worse. But Dr. Onabanjo, as we conclude, and very briefly, when I read your reflections, two parts caught my eye, and I want to end this interview with you just sharing this with our viewers here on ENCA. You've been to Cabo Delgado recently. You've been to some of those resettlement areas you're talking about. And you say in your reflections you've met some of the most resilient women and girls. And then you also say you witness that hope. You witness that there is hope in some of those resettlement villages of Cabo Delgado.
It is amazing. You know, we see how resilient communities are. We see the host communities for these women really embracing the solidarity, hospitality. And I think that gives us hope, because indeed, really without women in the place that they need to be, and we saw their leadership and really the desire to make change and get engaged in the peace and really returning dignity to their lives. So we left, although heartbroken, we left with a real sense of hope and determination, and I can only appeal for more support to the situation in Cabo Delgado.
Thank you very much, ma'am. That's Dr. Julita Onabanjo. She's the Regional Director for East and Southern Africa of the United Nations Agency for Population and Food, UNFPA.